Director of Pharmaceutical Services in Kwara State, the PCN Coordinator, a Deputy Director in Kwara State. We recognize the presence of professors and other lecturers, fellows of PSN, fellows of the West African Postgraduate College of Pharmacy, medical doctors, nurses, pharmacists in Nigeria and diaspora, UITH staff, and distinguished participants. You are all welcome to this program. So we will be having, I will be introducing the team lead of those speaking to us today. And immediately after my introduction, she will take over. But if we have the CMAC online, we would like him to take his opening remarks now. Is he online? Okay, so because of time, we will have to go on. When it's online, we will take his remarks. Mr. Hans, we're so much happy to have you once again with us, and we're appreciative of all the effort you've put in to help us to get to this stage. So you have the floor now. Please go on, introduce your team, and let's have what you have for us. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Ole. I really, and Dr. Bello for putting this on. I'm very appreciative of the passion and the interest that I'm seeing with my colleagues in Nigeria. So it's really an honor, and I thank God for this opportunity. Let me go. I think you've already introduced me, and I see there are a couple of people that are already sending messages in chats, so for those of you who don't know me, like I said, I'm Teresa Pounds. I'm a Nigerian. I'm from Asaba. I was born in Lagos, so I speak Yoruba very well, speak it even better than my language. So again, it's an honor to be here. Let me start with Lene Mahani. She is one of the team members that I have with me today to talk about the International Pharmacy Practice Residency Program and how it applies to what we're thinking of doing in Nigeria. She is with American Society of Health System Pharmacists. She's the Senior Director of Accreditation Office and Practice, also works with the advancement and also a senior consultant for the ASHP Consulting. She's a dear friend of mine. We've known each other for years, and I don't think we can ask for a better person to be part of this team than Lene. So Lene, we welcome. Thank you. I wish we could have done this in person, so you would have had a chance to see what Nigeria looks like and really enjoy the hospitality of my people. We're wonderful people. So thank you. Welcome, Lene. We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Now, thank you. Yeah. Dr. Sharif Kamal, he's a Director of Pharmaceutical Services in a children's cancer hospital in Egypt. He is somebody that I have to be one of this team, the team today. Unfortunately, he's probably running a little bit late. He has not joined us, but I'm hoping that before we get to the end of this presentation, he'll be able to join us and share his experiences with us. So why do we have him? And the reason why I had him on here is for him to tell us how he implemented the residency program in Egypt, because I felt we're all in the same kind of situation. So what we're going to be talking about today is the ASHP, International Pharmacy Practice Residency Program. And I'm going to be doing some of the presentation. We're going to tag team. You will hear from Lene, you hear from me. And then, like I said, when Dr. Kamal joins us, you all will also hear from him. So why advanced pharmacy practice? I saw this and I thought this is something very unique to what we're talking about, which is the cultural sensitivity and global pharmacy engagement in Africa. So pretty much, this was just describing what we are talking about doing. It talks about the global engagement between schools and colleges of pharmacy in the United States and Africa, the fact that it is increasing. It also emphasizing that for a balanced and fruitful, was kind of slow, that for a balanced and fruitful engagement, that sensitivity towards the cultural and clinical needs of the people and professionals of the African region is critical. And in that paper, they kind of discussed, divided the discussion into Southern, Eastern, Central, and West Africa, and the general information about certain stereotypes and misconceptions about the region where people will be discussed. But the key thing that came out of that paper is the recommendations, and that's what I really want to kind of focus on a little bit. The fact that we need to develop and implement competency-based pharmacy education to better prepare our pharmacists for their role as part of the healthcare system. And it's what we're hoping that the residency will kind of help us to help define new improved learning outcomes for clinical pharmacy education and reassess the teaching methods and learning environment, and also to strengthen experiential and interprofessional education through strategic planning and leveraging resources, and develop accreditation standards and quality assurance guidelines locally and regionally. So these are, I just thought this would be a good thing to get started to kind of lead us to where we're going. So next slide. Next slide, yeah. So why are we focusing on best practice standards? Well, the European Association of Hospital Pharmacists, this is an ongoing discussion from them. They've made some, headways. We also know about the Institute for Safe Medication Practices, talking about medication safety, the impact of clinical pharmacists being part of the interdisciplinary team, playing a role when it comes to medication therapy management. Now we also have International Pharmaceutical Federation statements, so they are also part of this group that is really focusing on developing best practice standards for pharmacy. And then of course, the American Society of Healthcare Pharmacists, well, they have the best practices for hospital and for health system pharmacists. And then of course, they have the pharmacy advancement initiative that they develop, and the latest one is the 2030 recommendations. Of course, we also have the Joint Commission International, and I'll be glad to learn from anybody who has really experienced the Joint Commission International. Next slide. Next slide. Now, when you look at the pharmacy workforce, I know we have different models everywhere. We have the administrative executive leaders. Here in the US, is typically the director of pharmacy. And sometimes the director of pharmacies can be part of the C-suite, meaning could be the chief operating officer. And in some cases, it can also be the chief executive officer. Then we have the clinical and operational leaders. We have managers, supervisors, coordinators. Then we have clinical pharmacists, and you have your pharmacist support staff, which is your technicians, your procurement specialists, and your clerical staff. Well, with the discussion we're going to be having today, which is the pharmacy residency program, we're talking about how do we develop our clinical pharmacists, and also maybe even our clinical leaders once they have this background. Next slide. Again, let's define clinical pharmacy again. As we all know, it's an area of pharmacy concerned with the science and practice of rational medicine. As a discipline, clinical pharmacy also has an obligation to contribute to the generation of new knowledge that advances health and quality of life. This means we as clinical pharmacists should possess pharmacotherapy knowledge, master skills to apply the knowledge in patient care, and take leadership roles to advance pharmacy practice and healthcare. The focus of a residency, as you guys will learn more, is to help prepare the clinical pharmacists to be able to apply pharmacotherapy knowledge into practice, to be able to have the confidence to participate as part of the interdisciplinary team, to be able to communicate with the physicians, be comfortable, confident, to say, okay, this is what's going on with the patient, but focusing on the pharmacotherapy. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, the clinical pharmacy competences. So when you're looking at the key areas under competences, direct patient care, pharmacotherapy knowledge, system-based care and population health, communication, professionalism, and continuing professional development. I will have to say, this is probably a good time for me to say that I am extremely encouraged with the CPAN activities. I follow very closely and I really read everything that is noted on that platform. And I'm really very proud with some of the information that I'm seeing. I'm seeing how the clinical pharmacy practice in Nigeria has really advanced and continue to advance. So some of the key things that come out of there is direct patient care. You guys present some cases and I see the interaction that goes among some of the people on there, and communication. So when you're talking about clinical pharmacist competencies, these are the major areas that we're looking at. Next slide. Next slide, yeah. So I mentioned being a key member of the healthcare team, a key member, a respected member, a member that has a voice when it comes to medication therapy management, a member that is confident to take that role, a member that the physician really says, okay, when it comes to medications, questions, research, name it, this is the person that I go to. So as a key member, we deploy to inpatient care clinics. So where are some of the areas where the clinical pharmacist can practice? In the acute care setting, which is in your inpatient care units or clinics. They help choose the right drug, like I just mentioned, the right drug, the right dose. They focus on high-risk therapies, highly complex patients. They also serve as drug knowledge expert who provides drug information. So you can see clinical pharmacists who are expertise in drug information, help to monitor response to drug therapy, improve safety of medication use system, improves outcome and medication therapy. Now, they are also the ones that help when it comes to pharmacoeconomic management of medication therapy management, because they can say, okay, this medication costs X amount of money and has this outcome, so you can use this as compared to that. So when you're looking at the key things that the clinical pharmacist can do, these are some of the key things. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. You have the next slide? Okay. No, continuing with the access functions of the clinical pharmacist before the next slide comes, they can access the status of the patient's health problems and can determine whether the prescribed medications are meeting their goals. So again, going back to the function, I think the slide is going backwards instead of forwards. They can also evaluate the appropriateness and effectiveness of the patient's medications. They can consult with the patient's physicians and other healthcare providers in selecting the medication therapy, and can advise the patient on how to take their medication. So again, talking about medication counseling. So now we're even looking at when patients get admitted to the hospital, pharmacists are involved in doing the medication history. They're involved in doing the medication reconciliation, because a lot of studies have shown that a lot of the medication errors pertaining to medication happens in that, So they are not only involved in medication reconciliation, but they're also involved in making sure that the patient is well educated before they get discharged on a particular medication. And in some cases too, call the patient at home to see how the patient is doing, to prevent the patient being readmitted again based on any medication-related issues. So they support the healthcare team's effort to educate the patient on other important steps to improve or maintain his health. Why is this important? Next slide. All this is important because all this together help improve patient care. It helps the quality of services is linked to to a well-led and managed pharmacy department. In fact, yesterday, we had a meeting in my department, and the person that my director of pharmacy reports to was talking about the value of pharmacy services. And it was really very, very gratifying to hear when he said, pharmacists, you all make a difference. We see pharmacists on the patient care areas. We see you guys rounding with the various teams, the internal medicine team, the critical care team. We see you guys with your pharmacy students, your residents. We see you guys participating in research study. It was really very, very, encouraging to hear that. So having strong staff buy-in and understanding with policy and guidelines can also help improve care. And there are services that are more innovative and efficient. I think I just said we're also looking at some point, very soon, we're looking at starting our ambulatory care services, meaning looking at the outpatient version of what we do working with the patients. So everything I've described right here is talking about patients that is in the hospital. So we also developing a program to see, okay, how can we start having our clinical pharmacists involved with our well patients in the ambulatory care setting? So all that is, are all the key things that pharmacists can do working with the various providers to help, improve patient care. Next slide. So what are some of the barriers to clinical pharmacy practice? I think some of them you guys already know. Number one, not having sufficient experiential training. And I know our system here is a little bit different from Nigeria. Our system here is the last year of the pharmacy student, the last year in their training is devoted to them having what we call experiential training. They have rotations in critical care. They have rotation in internal medicine. They have rotation in metabolic support. They have the rotations in kinetics. So they have blocks. Some of them do 4 weeks a block of rotation in each of these areas I've mentioned. Some do 5 weeks, but that whole year is focused on experiential training. And what do I mean by that? That means they are in a specific location. They are working with people you call preceptors. Preceptors are already the clinicians who are already practicing, all right, and have an expertise in that particular field. So the student is under that preceptor, and the role of the preceptor is to really expose the student to what they do. So that is the opportunity for the student to really see, oh, this is what a critical care specialist or a critical care pharmacist does, and they can be more hands-on. So if a clinician is not exposed to this experiential training, that may be a hindrance to them to being a clinical pharmacist. Now, the other point here is that sufficient educators with training in clinical disciplines. And that's what I meant by the preceptors. So that could be a hindrance. And clinical preceptors with advanced training. These are all key points, having clinical preceptors. And then the other one is consistent standards for services. So you have to develop the standards. You have to make it consistent, and everybody had to kind of agree that this is what it's going to be. And then, of course, standardized educational outcomes at sites, and then the regulatory and institutional support. So these are part of the barriers. So if none of this is there, it can make, having a clinical pharmacy practice, a challenge to develop. Next slide. So what are some of the strategies? And hopefully we're going to discuss that, some of them here. Obviously, we need to develop and implement competency-based pharmacy education to better prepare pharmacists for their role as part of the healthcare system. And I'm very encouraged to know that we already have some of that in place. We need to define new improved learning outcomes for clinical pharmacy education and reassess the teaching methods and learning environment. And all this can come in under the preceptor development program, whereby you look at, okay, how do you develop your preceptors to be able to precept, to be able to evaluate, and so on and so forth. We have to strengthen experiential and interprofessional education. And I really want to stress on that interprofessional education. Interprofessional education really helps give the pharmacist or the student the comfort level of dealing with other providers, of dealing with physicians, of interacting with nurses. So it helps with that confidence level there. So that can be done through strategic planning and leveraging the resources. We have to develop and implement quality continuous professional development programs as part of the licensure renewal. And I'm glad we have a PCN representative on. We have to also develop accreditation standards and quality assurance guidelines locally and regionally to address and standardize pharmacy education and practice. And then the last one says we have to create job opportunities for new graduates aligned with their new knowledge and skill set. So these are some of the strategies that can be employed to kind of address some of those limitations we have. Next slide. Now, so this is the point that I'm going to have Lene Mahani to be able to talk to us. So what I've done is giving you all a background of some of the clinical pharmacy pertinent information. So now I'm going to have Lene talk to us about the International Hospital Pharmacy Services Accreditation, if this is what we decide to do. So Lene.
Thank you, Teresa. It's really great to be working with you again. I hope we do see each other soon and in Nigeria. That would be fantastic.
Yes.
I just, I wanted to let you know I've been communicating and Sharif is on.
Yes, very good. Yes.
He is muted, so somebody will actually have to unmute him when it's time.
Okay, thank you.
So let me get started here. Teresa just provided at the tail end here of her introductory presentation a list of barriers to clinical practice, and then she provided some strategies to advance pharmacy practice. And one of these was to develop accreditation standards and quality assurance guidelines locally and regionally to address and standardize pharmacy education and practice. So what I'm going to do is quickly describe the ASHP accreditation standard for international hospital pharmacy services, and then that process for accreditation. Next slide, please. So accreditation has become very important in healthcare, and that's around the world, because accreditation is a process used by healthcare organizations to accurately assess the level of performance, their level of performance in relation to established standards, and then to implement ways to continuously improve. Hopefully you're all familiar with the Joint Commission International, or DNV, for hospital accreditation. Well, the ASHP accreditation is specific for hospital pharmacy services internationally. And what it's intended to do is provide formal recognition of the high quality of services and care that you're providing by your hospital pharmacy. And it demonstrates your commitment to excellence and quality improvement. And then we hope that this enhances the credibility and the value of your pharmacy services within your own organization, but also externally in your city, in your country. Now, the standards are very specific to international practice, and there is no other accreditation that is devoted solely and specifically to international hospital pharmacy. The standards are intended to provide support for the efforts of hospital pharmacy current initiatives in your own country in order to further improve practice there. Next slide, please. So let me give you a few examples of the benefits real quickly. So your hospital pharmacy has most certainly established policies and procedures for medication handling, safety, clinical services, and of course, quality improvement. What ASHP does is help you evaluate those policies and procedures so that you're assured that they're being followed consistently throughout your organization. And this increases your confidence in your own services. The evaluation also helps you to improve efficiencies and decrease variation. And both of those help you improve your risk management within the hospital. Now, overall, the standards and the accreditation process is intended to help you to continue to improve the quality of care that you provide. And in other words, this means to continue to advance your own pharmacy practice in Nigeria. So finally, this external validation it demonstrates the value of your pharmacy services again. And this is a very important means to provide your hospital with a competitive edge, if that's relevant for you and your community. Next slide, please. The accreditation process is really quite straightforward, and it's composed of the steps described on this slide. I'm not going to go through these in detail. I'd be happy to do that another time, or you certainly can find the detail on our website, but I'll just run through them. First, you receive a proposal for the accreditation, and that's based on the bed size of your hospital and the number of pharmacies. In other words, how much is this going to cost to get accreditation? You submit an application, and then the first big part of your accreditation process is to complete a checklist and submit documents that provide us evidence that you are compliant with the standards from a written standpoint. And the surveyors review that and go over those with you. Then we do the survey, which is probably the major portion of the evaluation. And that can be done remotely or in person. We've had to do these remotely over the last 12 months, and they've been quite successful. You get a written survey report, and from that, there's notice of any non-compliant or partially compliant standards, and you're asked to provide an action plan to bring those standards in compliance. And finally, a recommendation by the ASHP International Accreditation Commission is they review everything, then they send a recommendation to the board of directors of ASHP, who actually grants accreditation. And the accreditation term is 3 years. Next slide, please. Another major ASHP accreditation, and I think the one that's quite of interest today, is accreditation of the Pharmacy Practice Residency. Next slide, please. So some of you might be familiar with the ASHP PGY1 or PGY2 residencies, but there may be many of you who are not acquainted with a pharmacy practice residency program. So I'll just explain quickly here, and Teresa is really going to go into it. The residency is a pharmacist postgraduate training program, and the purpose for this, for developing a residency program, is so that the hospital pharmacy or outpatient pharmacy can build on the pharmacy education that the student has received and contribute to the development of clinical pharmacists, as Teresa was saying, responsible for medication-related care of patients. And it's also to grow pharmacists delivered patient care services in their own organization. Now, the residency establishes criteria for training pharmacists to achieve this professional competence, so then they can have a leadership role in advancing practice in your own country. Next slide, please. So why get, so you can develop an accredited or a residency program, but why have it accredited? And the reason for that is because it will, the accreditation process evaluates the program that you're offering against the standard. So we look at the educational and experiential practice being provided by the pharmacy service for the resident and the quality expectations that we have for the actual pharmacy services. Now, the International Pharmacy Practice Accreditation Standard is structurally identical to the PGY1 and PGY2. If you are, again, familiar with these, but the International Pharmacy Practice Residency Standard takes into consideration both the pharmacy's graduates' didactic and hospital experience in that country, and the current level of pharmacy services, again, what those expectations are in that country where the practice is located. I think the bottom line with the international standard is we are not trying to push the US standard into practice internationally. And it provides some flexibility compared to the PGY1 and the PGY2. So let me turn it back to Teresa here.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Leigh. That was great. So, like she mentioned, so we have, I think next slide. Yeah. All right. So in US, like Leigh mentioned, we have the PGY1 and the PGY2. Again, this is a post-graduate training. I think the best way to really understand this is to think of it as a pharmacist who has gone to pharmacy school, who is licensed, but needs an additional year of just focusing either in acute care training, meaning having one whole year whereby they have more clinical exposure, more hands-on experience, or it could be in the ambulatory care setting, or it can be in the community setting. So there are residency programs for acute care, for community and ambulatory. So now let's assume somebody does that postgraduate year one is typically a general residency program, meaning they're touching base on all aspects of clinical pharmacy areas. Now they may decide that, oh, we want to specialize either maybe in critical care or internal medicine or oncology. Then if they decide to do that, then they will do what you call the postgraduate year two, which is, that makes them a specialist in that particular area once they finish. So I think the best way, like I said, the PGY1 is more general. So that helps you develop a generalist clinical pharmacist. An additional year of PGY2 then helps develop a specialist in a particular area. It could be critical care, it could be nutrition support. Like in my case, I'm a specialist in critical care nutrition support. You can have internal medicine. What we're talking about today is what we need to do with the International Pharmacy Residency Program, what that will be. Now, so, and how we want to go about it. So I think Lene has made it some very good points, which is having ASHP involved will give that credibility, that accreditation. So it'd be interesting to hear how Kamal did his, and that will, and the fact that we also have to look at what's happening in that country. For example, we're not going to use the standards in the hospital. The standards that we have here for hospital in the US is not going to be applied to what is happening in Nigeria. So we have to look at what's happening in that hospital, in that country. The other point I want to make is typically residency programs are developed by hospitals, either institutions or community pharmacy or ambulatory care. So let's say you have a hospital A that is interested to do a residency program. That hospital A is the one that you're going to look at the international, the ASHP international standards and see if that hospital meets those criteria, all right? You know, so I think I want to make that clear. The same thing is going to be if it's a community pharmacy that wants to do that. So I think those are the points I want to make here. More discussion to come on this, but the key thing is what we're talking about here is International Pharmacy Residency Program, either in the acute care setting, community, or ambulatory, looking at the international, the ASHP international standards, and also realizing that we have to look at the standards in the particular country. More, we'll hear more from Kamal when we go there, okay? All right, so I think I would like to hand it over the next one. So we have Sharif Kamal. Thank you for joining us. You're on mute, so can you hear me, Sharif?
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. I am
yes.
enjoying the discussion.
Very good. Thank you for joining us. So what we would like to hear from you is how did you do it in your institution, in your country, Egypt? I already introduced you. He's the director of pharmacy, you know, and he started the residency program inside. So Sharif?
Yes, welcome everyone, and I hope that everyone is feeling good and is safe. And like the discussion about the residency program or the international pharmacy practice residency is a great step forward to improve the pharmacy practice everywhere. So when we started I need to tell you that we started to deal with the American Society of Health System Pharmacists back in 1998, because we started clinical pharmacy in Egypt then in 1998, and we were trying to find best practice. And as you, Teresa, were showing, the ASHP has this book about the best practice. So we're contacting ASHP to look for this book and how to make our best practice. And since then, we are doing all our policies, procedures, practice according to this best practice and SHP policies and procedures, white papers, all of this. So like we need first to ask ourselves, like the residency program or the international pharmacy practice residency is a very important step, and it is not only professional training or postgraduate education. To get the accreditation, you need to have both best practice, you need to have a good quality practice, and you need to have a good training site. And the best practice is available. You spoke about, and Lene spoke about Joint Commission International. So before we went for the residency, we went through two accreditation and re-accreditation by the Joint Commission International, where we were working very hard through years to understand the medication management and use process, and how pharmacy is responsible that the physician writes the right medication and that the nurse administers the right medication through the 8 steps of the medication management process. But regarding when we moved to the residency program, there was an additional part here. So you need to have a safe environment, a good quality environment for training, for postgraduate training, but you need to have a curriculum. You're speaking about the curriculum, learning experience, and learning activities. And here exactly was the major job, the major time I spent. So we started first to get our leadership commitment and the accreditation, as you're speaking about the importance of accreditation and why we should go for accreditation. One very important part of accreditation, that it unites all the staff in the hospital for one goal. In addition, it also ensures leadership commitment, which is essential for success of any project. So one of the major activities we were doing, that we were translating all these standards into practice. And the most part was how you can translate the learning outcomes that are here that are provided by the American Society of Health System Pharmacists into learning experiences in your hospital. And then, which is very critical, to learning activities in your hospital. So every learning outcome is translated into learning experience and learning activities. And to do that, you need to do two things: prepare your hospital and prepare your staff, and provide tool for your staff and for the residents. So you spoke about the preceptors. This is a major issue. You need to, we worked very hard to prepare and qualify our pharmacy staff that were already more than 5, maybe sometimes 10 years experience in clinical pharmacy. We worked through a complete year to how to make them qualified preceptors for the residency program. And then we went through the paperwork of how to apply for resident program and all of this. And then like it is very important also to prepare your site to receive residents. And the issue in training residents that they are not students. So residents need to be able to work by themselves. And we spend a lot of time, maybe also a lot of time to convince the staff to trust residents to do the work. And as you were saying about the rotation, so for example, if you have a rotation that is 1 month, for example, the first week is shadowing, and then rest of the weeks they are responsible for patients. So this is very important to do. So like the first step that you need to do to go for the residency program, number one, is you need to meet your staff and agree on why you are making this residency program. And we agreed that this residency program is rewriting history for pharmacy practice in Egypt. And that this residency program, the International Pharmacist Residency, will change not only the future of pharmacy, but also the future of pharmacy education. And what we made, that we created by this residency, like when you graduate as a pharmacist in Egypt, I don't know about Nigeria. I met a lot of Nigerian students when I was teaching in one of the faculties of pharmacies in Egypt in 6th of October. So I think also a lot of Nigerian also study in Egypt and are well with the system in Egypt. But if you graduate from pharmacy in Egypt, you don't have a career path. So what we made, and also we worked with our government, that when a pharmacist graduates, he needs to have a career path, starting with the PharmD. And now we changed our educational system to have the graduation with PharmD, not with a baccalaureate. And then residency 1, which is a general residency, residency 2, which is specialized, then specialization and board examination, and then to be a clinical pharmacy consultant. I can share with you this career path we made, and we went through all this residency program. The accreditation itself is a journey, and it is a very, very interesting journey to go. And I will be for you anytime. I will give you all what we have. I will help you anytime, anywhere. Just tell me, and you are going to get all what we have here. Thank you very much for your passion and for your great future to have.
Very good. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharif Kamal. Do you see why I had him on? Because I knew he is very passionate about this, and that he's definitely going to support us in this endeavor. So thank you. We appreciate that. So I'm going to go on to the next slide. I think, so the next slide, please. And I've made some key points that you mentioned, you know. So I think the next slide, the one after that, because you've already talked about this slide, right? The accreditation process, Renee, right? So the next one is, I think when you're talking about the International Hospital Pharmacy Services Accreditation, and I know you guys are hearing residency, you're hearing accreditation for the hospital. They go hand in hand. And I have some specific questions that I'm going to ask Dr. Kamal. I know here in US, they highly recommend that you have Joint Commission, that your institution is Joint Commission accredited. So my question would be, for the international, is that also a requirement for the international accreditation, for the residency program, for the institution to be Joint Commission accredited, the International Joint Commission accredited?
So I think Linnea will answer this more probably, but I think that if you get Joint Commission like us, it will make your life easier, more easier, and is an advantage. But I think also there are some national, like in Egypt now, there is national accreditation bodies, by the government. So this is also can be a good accreditation body. So if, there need to be any thoughts of a quality healthcare accreditation, either national or international, because like going into the process of accreditation itself will make you ready for the residency program and to understand a lot of steps. And also will have an advantage because when you are looking for accrediting the residency program, you are looking that in this hospital, the resident will be trained on the best practice and good quality in a safe environment. So you need to, yes.
Okay, very good. I think we need to table that for a discussion point. So looking at the internet, thank you for sharing that. So the role of the ASHP International Accreditation Commission, and I think Renee, you can speak to this because both of us are members of this.
Yes, yes. And just to add on to Sharif's point about the Joint Commission, the standard for hospital and for residency, neither of them requires there be an external accreditation of the hospital. Highly advised, just as Dr. Kamal was mentioning. We're looking for some evidence that the care and services of the hospital as a whole is of high quality. So sometimes governments do that versus a voluntary accreditation. So thanks, Sharif.
Okay.
We've been talking about the two different, multiple accreditation programs available through ASHP. On the US side, there is a commission that reviews accreditations for US hospitals. And ASHP felt it was very important that for our international accreditations that we create an international accreditation commission with a similar role, and that there be international representation on that committee, because after all, we are doing this on with a global perspective. So the ASHP International Accreditation Commission has been in place for, about 4 or 5 years. And the responsibility of that commission is to oversee the standards as they're developed, as they're changed. And right now there are two standards, and that's the Pharmacy Practice Residency and the Hospital Pharmacy Services Standard. And the commission also reviews all of the survey reports from the various applicants for accreditation, and then they are the ones that recommend accreditation to the board of directors. So it's a group of peers that reviews what the surveyors provide from the evaluation. So there's that global representation includes the Netherlands, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Spain, UAE, and of course the US. And Teresa sits on that commission, and Sharif also does. Both of those were appointed last fall, and my guess is you're going to have a hard time getting off of that commission.
I would need to be on there.
Lastly, the accreditation term for hospital is 3 years. For the residency, it can be anywhere from 1 to 6 years. Back to you, Teresa.
Thank you. Thank you, Lene, for explaining that. Next slide. Yeah. The accreditation, preparation, and training. And we can tag team this. Next slide. So I think, Lene, you already mentioned some of this. So these are some of the steps that are involved for preparing for accreditation. Of course, you already talked about the readiness to offer a residency program, and you all heard from Dr. Kamal. He mentioned to you guys, the first thing is you have to get leadership buy-in. You have to have a champion within your institution. I've been a residency program director now, going to like close to like 18, 19 years. I have a lot of my residents that are out there doing bigger and better things than I am. Some of them are specialists. Some of them are clinical pharmacists. Some of them have even advanced to the point whereby they developing clinical pharmacy programs, and that's the beauty about being involved in residency, for you to mentor, train individuals that will be out there and continue to advance clinical pharmacy program. Now, so one is the readiness to offer one. Do you want to, does your institution have the interest? Do you have the buy-in from your management team? Yeah, a physician could even be one of your champions. So that's very important. Then the next one would be the readiness and suitability to undergo accreditation of pharmacy department. And I want to stress here is that definitely we're not going to be using US standards. Definitely will not be the key. So there is international standards, because the standards we have in Nigeria, for example, is different from the one we have here in US. So that is going to be taken into account. And that's why they have the standards that will be shared with the organization. And then you'll be able to do a pre-assessment, looking at that information to say, okay, does this meet this? Is it partial? Is it fully compliant? Or is it not compliant before you go ahead and do that? Now, they also have the mock surveys for candidate programs and other customized programs, So I would like to hear from Sharif at some point, if he actually did that. If he did that, how did he do it? So these are some of the key steps, when you're looking at, preparing for accreditation, once you develop the interest that this is what you want to do. Again, I want to stress, it's not just in acute care. Community pharmacy can also have a residency. So please kind of keep that in mind. Next slide. Now, patient care services and scope of pharmacy service, they're going to look at that. And some of the key things that they will look at would be, what kind of relationship do you have with your providers, your physicians? What kind of relationship do you have with nurses? Do you have are your pharmacists already involved in working with all these key disciplines? What kind of clinical services or what kind of programs you already have, in place, because they want to make sure that when you have the resident is able to be trained in an environment that will allow them good opportunities. And that's where your preceptors will come in. And that's another point I want to mention here. When I started looking at this about the preceptors, I was kind of concerned that, maybe with Nigeria, it's going to be like it is here in US in terms of preceptors qualification. Here in US, preceptors, they're looking at somebody who already probably is residency trained. Whereas when you look at the standards that we develop for the international, they have made allowance to say, okay, we know we don't have residency programs in this part of, in that part, in Nigeria. So I was very happy to note that they're saying that if you have somebody who has been practicing for X amount of years in a particular field with preceptor development program, that person can be a preceptor. So that's very encouraging. So I think we need to keep that in mind too about that. Now, they're also looking at their organizational assessment. Again, that goes back to your leadership. Does your leadership support pharmacy, your pharmacy department, to be able to have such a program? What kind of support are you getting? There are going to be resources so that when you do have a resident, they will support that. Again, remember what Sharif said, residents, they are quote unquote, they're also being paid. They're paid to be in training. So it's like you're getting the best of both worlds here. You're training them, but at the same time, you're getting services. They can help you develop services. They can help, they do research projects. Like a lot of my residents have done research projects that have helped me advance my clinical pharmacy program in my hospital. For example, one of my current residents that is going to be finishing in June, most likely would be the ambulatory clinical pharmacist in the ambulatory care setting, because I'm looking at expanding my services over there. So he's already gone through the training. He did a rotation over there. He knows that. So I think that's the way to kind of look at this. You know, you're getting the best, but they have to be paid. So if you're normally paying your pharmacists, I'm just throwing a figure out. If you're paying them $100,000, again, I'm just throwing that. Your residence is probably going to be making 1/3 of that. So they could make it like my residents, you know, so those are the kind of things to kind of look at. And the third thing is your preceptor complement. And I think I already mentioned that. I'm sure questions will come up on this. Next slide. Next slide. The organizational assessment, this just kind of tells you what that is, the patient care demographics and services, medication policy, medication safety and quality. I think Kamal mentioned this and Lene mentioned this. And then of course, your external assessments and accreditation. Next slide. So when you're looking at the pharmacy department, we talked about the pharmacy operations. Who is the head? Who is the director of pharmacy? Do you have somebody who is focusing on the operations? Do you have, so it talks about your organizational structure, all right? And then the second one where it says the clinical and patient care services, what kind of services you have? For example, do you have your pharmacists decentralized to your ICU area? Do you have them decentralized to your internal medicine? Do you have your pharmacists involved in the oncology? Are you, you know, so it looks at what you currently have in terms of your patient care services. And of course, yeah, the third one says your policy, your safety, quality, and supply chain, so that those are all some of the things they're going to look at. But you will have your pre-assessment questions that will line up, that will be aligned with your standards to kind of see where you are with that. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so so the next slides, I think. Okay, so this is talking about your clinical and patient care. Wait a minute, can you go back a little bit? Go back to the previous slides, please. Yeah, all right. So for your clinical and patient care services, I think we already talked about that, which is your pharmacist roles with healthcare teams. And then of course, your pharmacist roles with patient and their families. So talking about medications, counsel, some of those things, you know, we talked about. So going to the next slide, which is your preceptor complement. So when you're looking at developing your program, you're going to look at, first of all, what is your curriculum? Your curriculum is going to dictate how many preceptors you need. It's also going to look, you're also going to look at what are the patient care roles and responsibilities, and then qualifications. And qualifications is already what I already mentioned. So in Nigeria, we're probably going to be saying qualifications of our preceptors probably will not be people who already are residency trained. It's probably going to be people who are already practicing X amount of years in that particular area, or it could be plus minus people that have gone through the fellowship. So I think that's the key thing that I really want to make sure, because it's not going to be the same as we have here in US. US is looking at, are you residency trained? But in Nigeria, it's going to be how many years have you practiced in that particular area? And then maybe you can, doing like a preceptor development program could help develop those people more into preceptors. And of course, the teaching roles, So I think the next slide just kind of gives you guys, next slide. So the next slide just talks about access, ability to meet the ASHP accreditation standards, and that, go on to the next slide. And that just kind of gives you, again, some of the things that you all have heard in terms of self-assessment, use of best practice, and then the customs and norms. And then the training programs, we already talked about that too, is once you decide you're going to do it, then obviously you need to also talk about designing your residency program. You may have to do a workshop. Yeah, then you have to develop your program. And then, of course, your preceptor development, which is what I mentioned quite a bit about that. And then you have on the slide, which is slide 33, talks about program and preceptor development, some of the key aspects of your preceptor development program. Maybe this is somewhere, you know, if you're interested and you want to do this, probably having somebody to help you do the preceptor development program. Like I've done a few preceptor development program in Nigeria in the past. Kamel can be a resource person, you know, for that, you know. All right. So Linnea, I don't know if you want to talk about the ASHP aspects in terms of once they decide that they want to do, what was the step in terms of this?
Sure, I can jump in here. And let's see, if you could go ahead a slide, so 32.
Mm-hmm. Is that the
training programs? It's
okay,
all right.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
So we know, you know, there's a great desire to develop residency programs. And over the years, ASHP has expended a lot of energy for the good of our members, but for the good of practice, because that's who we serve, into helping pharmacies develop residencies. So we have a couple, quite a few offerings. And one of those is this residency program design and conduct workshop. And that is offered typically at the mid-year clinical meeting. It's a day and a half. It precedes the actual meeting. And you have very experienced residency preceptors who many have been residency surveyors also for the accreditation teaching that. So you're learning from your peers. There are also specific programs for teaching you how to develop the program itself and preceptor development. So next slide, please. The program and preceptor development, I won't go through all of these, but it just points out these areas that the training would assist you with. Again, you can do this all on your own. We just have, I think, probably the best consultant you can find, and that's Dave Warner, who actually was a primary residency surveyor for 20 years before he actually started doing programs such as this for ASHP. And he's not only is he a wealth of knowledge, but he is a teacher at heart and a facilitator. So he's quite amazing at doing this. And he has done it all over the world. I think the guy's got more miles than any of us put together. Next slides. We also conduct a mock survey. So Dave would do this for you. It's simulation of actually what the survey, the accreditation survey, would be like, but it's from the beginning to the end of the whole accreditation process. So let me go to the next slide. So starting with the preparation for actually going through a survey, he's going to help you with that. Filling out, how do you complete the checklist, do a self-assessment, what attachments are going to be needed, how does this operationally work? Next slide, please. So particularly, he preps you for document review, and then he actually conducts a document. You provide the documents, he does an actual review to help you prepare for the actual accreditation. So he's going to give you tips and ideas. Here's what's missing. This is not meeting the standard. So not only do your documents need to be updated, but maybe some aspect of your program. Next slide, please. The survey, this talks a little bit about the reports. With the mock survey, Dave is actually going to do a walkthrough just like an actual survey and talk you through every aspect, same as the survey itinerary would be with your accreditation surveyor, and then provide the reports and work with you afterwards with those reports and tell you about your strengths, opportunities for improvement, areas that need to be improved to meet the accreditation standard. Next slide, please. And this just reiterates what he's going to provide you with a mock survey report, as I've already talked about. Next slide, please. And then just to let you all know, the training programs that he does, certainly they're offered at the mid-year clinical meeting and the preceptors meeting that's in the fall. Both of those in the US, of course, we've done those virtually, but he also takes his training programs across the world. So they can be done regionally, say within a region of Nigeria or for the country, but he also can present them at your own meetings and conferences if that's more conducive. And also it could be a very specific training. Say you want to work specifically in development of clinical services. He's able to help you with that, again, in his vast years of experience. So I'll turn it back to Teresa.
Yeah, thank you, Lene. So I would like to just try to conclude this so that we can have time for questions, to just let you all know some of the ASHP certificate programs that they have available. Medication reconciliation. So, and this is probably a time for me to say, for those of you who are on, probably would not be a bad idea to become a member of ASHP. I've been a member for years. I mean, there's a lot of information, a lot of services that they have that definitely, in fact, and that gives you the opportunity to network with your peers also. So they have medication reconciliation, pharmacy revenue cycle management, that's new, and it's all in the slides, and we will make sure that you guys get the slides. And again, I also want to thank ASHP for presenting the slides to us, for providing this. Compound steroid preparation, that's also new. Pharmacokinetics, medication safety, emergency medicine, nutrition support, and then so a lot, pharmacy informatics, so a lot of good programs. And these programs also provide CEs for international pharmacy. So not only do you get to do this virtually on your own time, but you also get CEs, of that. So there are also some events. I think Lene mentioned some of the events. The ASHP mid-year clinical meeting, I think I've been going to that meeting for almost 15 years, It's well, in fact, I think it's one of the biggest pharmacy conference in the world, if I'm not mistaken, excellent, conference. So, and I've seen some Nigerians who have come from there to that meeting, so, and FIP is also a representative there. And they also have their summer meetings. ASHP Conference for Pharmacy Leaders is also another good one. And then, of course, the National Pharmacy Preceptors Conference for those who are interested in residency program. I think that kind of ends the presentation part. We would like to hear what questions you have. I have a couple of questions too that I have for Lene, and one of them is, if somebody, any of our members here decide that they want to do this, what is the cost from ASHP?
Thanks, Teresa. Yes, certainly I can answer that. There is a one-time application fee for the residency, and that is $2,500 US. And then the yearly annual accreditation fee is $5,000. These are the international costs. Those costs have been prepared specifically for international, and they are substantially less than the US.
$5,000.
So it's $2,500 for the application fee. Okay, and that fee will enable them to come and do the review, right? Is that correct?
Yes. So when you apply, the pharmacy will be charged the application fee plus the first year's annual accreditation fee, but prorated to the number of months in the year. Because the annual accreditation fee is basically that ongoing upkeep of your accreditation.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty much the way it is here in US. So we pay a fee to keep up the accreditation. So we have an annual accreditation fee also here in Europe.
Correct. It's the same fee model with the
Yes.
US, but it's substantially lower.
Yes, it is lower. That's correct. Yeah. All right. So that's my question. So, Doctor, I'm going to hand it over to our moderator, Dr. Joseph Ole. I just wanted to ask that question to be part of the, yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Teresa and the team. That was very, very far-reaching, and we appreciate you all for that.
Yeah,
so before I begin to take questions, I would just want to say 1-2 things, and I have questions myself. One thing is clear from all of this is that residency is not a classroom thing.
No.
It's an institute, I mean, the hospital thing, and the residents get trained in the hospital. All right, and there was the mention of the Joint Commission by, is it Dr. Sharif? I didn't quite get that aspect right. The role of the Joint Commission, something. Then I would like to know if a pharmacist undergo the, is it PGY1?
Right.
What will the certification read? You just want to end at the PGY1. And then do you do the international pharmacy residency program like that to reflect generalist and specialist trainings? And those are my questions.
I think, Dr. Sharif, I can have you take the Joint Commission question, and I can take some,
Yes, okay.
some of the other ones. Yeah.
When we spoke about the Joint Commission International, it is not a requirement that you have, but it is a recommendation, and it will help you. Because as you said, the International Pharmacy Practice Residency Program is all in the hospital. You are training someone. You can look to the resident as a new staff that is working really. So when you are training someone, you want to train him to give him best practice in a safe place. And this, what any quality accreditation will tell us, that you are doing your best practice. So we had Joint Commission International. So this was something that would help us to achieve a good advancement regarding the quality of our pharmacy practice and medication management and use. So it is not required, but it is recommended. If you have any national or a body that will go through a survey for you to ensure that your practice is quality healthcare, this also will be very good. I think it is, again, as Lene was saying, it is not a must, it is not required, it is advised or recommended, and it helped me a lot to build the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. And then thank you for doing that. Then the other question you had about the certification, right, for the PGY1 and PGY2. What we do here is that we have a certificate for a PGY1 once they complete it. And in that certificate, it will say that this program has been accredited by the ASHP. You know, it will have that verbiage in there. Then it will have the name, the signature, and the name of the program director, because you have to have a residency program director, and you also have the executive, your CEO, whoever is your lead of your hospital, whether it's a CEO or whether it's CMAC, whichever it is in Nigeria, and the director of pharmacy. Those three signatures will be there. So you have the verbiage that will say, so and such a person has completed the PGY1 residency program accredited by the ASHP, blah, blah, you know, the verbiage. And I'll be glad to screenshot and show you guys what it's like. Now, for PGY2, it's going to be the same thing. So it will say the name of that person, but instead of PGY1, it will be PGY2. And of course, we have the year. Okay.
The,
All right,
the other
so
thing that so that's for the resident. ASHP is going to provide your pharmacy services with a certificate of accreditation that says this is the date the residency program was accredited. And that one is actually signed by the ASHP CEO. And that remains on your wall for as long as you remain accredited.
That's correct.
wow.
That's true. Yeah, so you will have, and that's good. Thanks, Renee. So you will have the one for the institution in terms of the residency program. Then what I described to you was the one for the resident after they've been through the program. Does it make
All
sense?
right. Yeah, it does. Thank you. Yeah, I will take other questions, but permit me to recognize the presence of Professor Azuka Opara, a professor of clinical pharmacist. We have other professors of clinical pharmacists with us, Professor Gbola Olayiwola and Professor Ariola Joda. I recognize Dr. Adekunle Tometi from USA, pharmacist Folashade Lawal, pharmacist Margaret Oborno, Dr. Mutiat Olulawal, the National Secretary of CPAN, Dr. Mohamed Habib, Dr. Titi Onedo, and Dr. Kukigam. You're all welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so I recognize other people, then we can take questions. Now, please, you can use the raise hand icon. So,
yeah. Can I make one comment? This residency program too, it can also be in community pharmacy practice. They're also residency, yeah. So I just want to make, so it's not just acute care, but also community. Yeah.
All right, so we'll take questions now, and you can also send in chats for your questions. Am I host? So I want to recognize Dr. Alphonsus Peter and Dr. Famakide. Dr. Alphonsus, you raise up your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello.
I'm not.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Dr. Alphonsus Peter. I'd like to thank Line for the wonderful presentation, Dr. Teresa Pound and Dr. Kama from Egypt. We've actually been looking at how to fine-tune our own kind of board certification training. By coincidence, I'm the one in charge of CPAN group of trainers. So it's of interest to me that we are actually going this far. I had actually made personal contact with somebody from American College of Clinical Pharmacy with respect to this. And some of the information he gave me is similar to what you are saying today. And one of which is that they have assessment of the sites that are going to be used for this kind of presentation. You know, he equally said it could be online or it could be physical, depending on what we are ready. So I'm so elated that we are going this far and we have the right people handling this topic. I wanted to ask a question about community pharmacy in the residency, and good enough, Dr. Teresa Pound has quickly just added to that it's possible and it's doable. Now, I'd like to know what would be the criteria for getting this international residency done in community pharmacy, you know, in Nigeria. Secondly, you talked about the international training, that we have a trainer, there is somebody that could do it for us, that he probably could liaise with us or we could liaise with him. I'm interested to know the personality or the contact of the director of that international training you talked about while you were making your presentation. You said we could communicate with him. He might go around from time to time. It could be some virtual. So I think I'd like to communicate with him, being the one in charge of CPAN group of trainers. So we could come up with something that would be useful to us in our own setting. So I've asked two questions. One is community pharmacy. One is the contact of the trainer and what the person can do for us. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So
do we harvest all the questions, or you would like to respond to each question?
I think maybe we can get all the questions and then we'll start responding.
All right, Professor Ariola Joda, please, your hand is raised. You can ask your question now.
Good afternoon and good morning to our speakers. Thank you so very much for this very, very enlightening presentation. Dr. Pounds, you are always welcome because you're always contributing to pharmacy development in Nigeria. We are really grateful for you. My question, first on the cost. You said the response was that 2.5 by the pharmacist. I wanted to clarify who pays this money that that was talked about. Is it the institution or is it the individual? If it's the institution, will that be the same amount if this residency is a community pharmacy residency application? Would it be the same amount that the community pharmacy would pay? Or is it for the community pharmacy residency, would we be looking at the level of maybe an association of community pharmacists coming together, or it would be an individual community pharmacy that would be applying for the community pharmacy residency? I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. My other question has to do with this joint commission. I'm still not clear. That joint commission, are we saying that is it a joint commission for a specific purpose, or it is a group of commissions? Like maybe we're looking at the commission for physicians, and commission for pharmacists, and commission for I don't know. You know, I just want to be clear on what we mean by desirable application for joint commission. That desirable application, we have established that it is not compulsory, but I'm not quite sure of what the joint commission is about. Is it that it's a group of commissions looking at different things, or that commission is actually the name of a committee or agency specific for a specific purpose? So I just need some clarification on that as well. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Teresa, I apologize for interjecting. Do you think that I could answer some of these now? Because I won't be able to keep track of all of these.
Okay, go ahead. You go ahead, Jen. Why don't you answer some of them? Okay. Okay. Is it okay? Go ahead.
It might, so I'm getting a lot of interference. Maybe if everybody went on mute.
Can everybody go on mute so that there's a lot of interference? Okay. Is it better now, Lene? Okay, so could we unmute Lene?
There we go. I'm sorry. Yes, it's very much better. Thank you so much. And thanks for allowing me to interject. That was a lot of questions and they were starting to overlap a little bit. Yeah. So I want to clarify the PGY1, it has an application for ambulatory care pharmacy. The PGY1 does. The International Pharmacy Practice Residency Program does not have a focus on community pharmacy, excuse me, let me clarify, community pharmacy. And the reason that ASHP did not develop and pursue the community-based pharmacy application of the residency is because we have found internationally that community pharmacy practice is quite a bit behind hospital pharmacy practice, to the point that the practice needs to advance a little bit more before we can actually conduct a residency. So there needs to be some clinical services, there needs to be some training going on in the community pharmacies. Now, this may be completely inaccurate for Nigeria. I do not know community pharmacy practice in Nigeria. Just so you know the background though for ASHP, the IPPR, International Pharmacy Practice Residency Program, is aimed towards development of postgraduate pharmacists in the hospital setting that may have some ambulatory care or a good amount of ambulatory care, may have some community-based pharmacies, but it is not the primary focus for that one. So
Okay.
just so I'm clear about that. So that addresses the cost as well. There is only the one international, and that's consistent. I'll send you Dave Warner's contact for his he'll talk to you about his consultation services as well as all those other programs. And then the Joint Commission, the US standard for residency, the PGY1 and the PGY2 and the international all have at least a recommendation that there is some evidence of evaluation of the hospital as a whole. So whether it's a joint commission or say a government, like I think Saudi Arabia and some of the other Middle East countries actually require government evaluations of each of their hospitals. That will suffice for the International Pharmacy Practice Residency. That will suffice for the International Hospital Pharmacy Services Accreditation as well. In the US, for the PGY1 or PGY2, there is a requirement for a body such as the Joint Commission or a governmental body in an international location. There is a requirement that there's evidence of that. Teresa, did that clarify?
Yeah, I think you clarified. Thank you for clarifying the community. I know that's going to be an area in future, hopefully, that we have a lot of interest in. So thank you. So what ASHP currently has available is for the hospital.
Right.
So my question, in terms of Nigeria, I'm not sure what agency really looks at the practices in the hospitals to make sure they're up to standard, and I think Mrs. Ilorin was on, but I don't know if she's still on. I would have loved to have us recognize her. She's with, I don't know if she's still on. So what actually is the organization that really governs the practices in hospital in Nigeria? Here in US, we look at Joint Commission. So Joint Commission is one. I don't know if there's anybody that can at least type that in. So, but you did answer the questions. Yeah, so that was good.
Thank you. In Nigeria, we have the council for each body. The council for each profession regulates their practice. We do not have
Pharmacy Council.
Something that looks like a joint commission yet.
Okay.
So even the specialists here are accredited by the institution providing the training. So for example, for pharmacy generally, we have the PCN. So the PCN determines the practice standard.
Okay.
But what we're doing with residency now is to up our game, to take clinical pharmacy, further from what we're doing now. And that's why we have called this meeting for you to, share with us how we could go about it. And we're beginning to see areas that we also need to address here. But for now, we do not have a general body that accredits hospital. What we have accredited are the services the hospital provide.
Okay, very good. And I think there was a question in terms of who pays the 2,500, the money. Let's say institution A, let's say you are a hospital named Adams Hospital, right? Whoever that interested hospital is the one who pays for that. So it's not an individual. So let's say you are a director of pharmacy in hospital A, and your your leadership, meaning whoever, I think in Nigeria is CMAC or whatever, you know, agrees that you all need to have a residency, a pharmacy practice residency, international residency program, that hospital will be the one responsible for the fee to that. That's the way it is in my hospital. Like, I'm the residency program director here. My hospital pays the annual fee, and my hospital was the one that pays the fee associated with the residency program. And my hospital is the one that ensures that I have in my budget to pay the residents their salary. So I don't know if that answers your question on that, whoever asked that question.
Okay. Dr. Adesanya, you can ask your question now, please. Dr. Rachel Adesanya. Dr. Rachel, you can unmute yourself.
And then also there's, yeah. Yeah, and there's also Dr. Mwafo, Maureen Mwafo is also.
Yes. Okay, Dr. Richard, go ahead.
Hello?
Hello? Yes.
You can hear me now. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, just not to take our time, want to thank all the presenters once again. We appreciate you.
Yeah, we can't hear her.
All right, we will take Dr. Maureen Mwafo. Please unmute yourself and ask your question, Dr. Maureen.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I hope I'm okay. I'm glad
Yeah.
I'm here this evening to listen to these highly inspirational lectures from our colleague, mother of clinical pharmacy in Nigeria, Dr. Teresa. We are glad to have you.
Thank you.
I have a few questions. People around me have been asking me, what is the difference between this ASHP residency we are talking about now and what we have on ground in Nigeria? That's the West African Postgraduate College of Pharmacy, because we still have some of their students in our facility doing their residency. So I want to ask, and I'm happy that Professor Azuka Opara is with us now. Can you differentiate the two programs now? What are the differences? Are we going to integrate this particular one into what we already have on ground, or must they go separately so that we understand what we are doing, and are we able to, answer this question to my younger colleagues that they need to have a certification in a particular specialty in clinical pharmacy. So we are confused. Please, we need clarification. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Maureen. Dr. Mwafo, it's good to, thanks for recognizing me, and thanks for on. So is Professor Pa still on?
Yes. Yes, I am on. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Teresa Pounds and Len and Sherif from Egypt. Yeah, so straight to the question that Maureen asked. When we started the postgraduate college fellowship, West African Postgraduate College of Pharmacy, the residency is an integral component of the training. But you have the didactic component and you have the residency component. Okay, but the residency in the US is focused is purely facility-based. And for the period of training, the PGY1 is the general residency, and the PGY2 is the specialist residency. Okay, so we are moving towards that at the postgraduate college. Of course, with Teresa Pounds, we have initiated some moves to harmonize at the training. So eventually, what we are moving towards is to have a focused residency training program at the postgraduate college. The West African Postgraduate College happens to be the qualifying body for postgraduate training of practitioner pharmacists in Nigeria and other West African countries for now. So a time will come, maybe not too long, because now that we have got government recognition for the training of the college, the next step is for us to have a kind of focused residency program. And I think the international accreditation by ASHP will really give credibility to what we are doing. So we are going to work with ASHP towards achieving that. So what we have on ground now, the residency program we have on ground now, is not traditional, I might put it that way. It looks like it's not traditional residency program, okay? But that was the best we could start. But we can move a little step further, to make it more focused, to be similar to the kind of residency training you have in the US.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. That is good to hear you. Can I just add one or two things to what Prof said?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's you are very correct. But one thing I would say is that there's already a sound foundation laid by the postgraduate training, what you and that group have done. So that is a positive thing. Now, so if it does come to the point that the residency is going to be started, those people, the pharmacists that have gone through that postgraduate training, will have the qualification to be preceptors. So that's a big positive. So you will not be starting from scratch. And I hope, Maureen, that answers your question. So a foundation is already laid. Now, we just need to take it to the next level. The next level meaning what Prof just described, which is getting more hands-on, which I think is the next level. Getting more hands-on so that you can build that confidence, have that confidence and be able to apply a lot of those knowledge you have in practice. So I just wanted to make the point that at least we have a solid foundation and we have people who have the background through this postgraduate training to be preceptors so that we can move it to the next level. So good point. Thank you.
Teresa, I would just interject really quickly. This is exactly how the residency programs started and developed in the United States. One or two, and the pharmacy services developed some clinical programs, then they started training. So this is exactly, and I think Sharif speaks to this as well, exactly what he's trying to do and his colleagues in Egypt.
Very good.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. We do not seem to have any more questions, but there are some charts. If I'm permitted, I will take the two charts. One asks, can we come over to the US for residency training?
I can take that. The qualification for a resident to be able to qualify to apply, for a candidate to qualify to apply for residency in US, a couple. One, they have to have a PharmD from an accredited PharmD school in good standing. they have to be licensed. Because keep in mind, these are pharmacists. So PharmD, accredited PharmD, pharmacy school, licensed. Then they have to go through what we call a matching program. They have to first of all apply, right? If they are, once they apply, if they meet the criteria of a specific residency program, they'll be invited for interview. So when they come for interview, then they will go through the matching program. The matching means, you know, and if they match with a particular program, then they can start their residency program. So somebody coming from Nigeria, the issues will be, the PharmD will not be an issue, right? Will not be an issue. The issue will be, are they licensed? Are they licensed in US? So that means they have to go through the requirements, you know, through the, being that they're trained in the foreign, you know, the foreign equivalency exam to become licensed. So I think the answer to that question is yes or no. If you can meet this criteria, I don't see why not. I have had candidates, Nigerians who trained in Nigeria, who came to US, who are probably have been practicing and who applied to my residency program. I think I've had like 2 instances, some that met the criteria for me to invite them for interview, but they didn't make it to the interview process. So there are a lot of logistics that we need to look at. ASHP really wants to make sure that you have a fair process in place to really make sure that candidates who meet your criteria, you interview them and that they go through a successful program. So I think the answer to your question would be, are they licensed? Would they be licensed in US? Because without the licensure, they will not meet that criteria. I don't know if that answers your question.
All right, thank you. And the last question is, it says, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, the last question says, what is the opportunity for internship position for a FPGEC certified pharmacist in the hospital pharmacy in the US? Internship position for a FPGEC certified pharmacist in the hospital pharmacy in the US.
So I want to understand that a little bit. Is this person a pharmacist already? Can we have that person clarify their question a little bit? There's echo going on here too. Yeah, because I'm wanting to see what's the FP, what's he referring to, that the FPGEC, what is he referring to? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so what's the FPGEC? So has this person gone through pharmacy training in Nigeria and they want to do internship in US?
To answer that, he said he could answer that.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
All right, Dr. Adekule, please unmute yourself.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and I want to thank my incoming president of NAPSA, Dr. Teresa and our team for such a brilliant presentation.
Thank you.
Now, the FPGEC is a foreign graduate equivalency exam certification. That is a pharmacist like myself that trained at Great Effect and came over to America. I had to write the foreign graduate equivalency examination.
Okay.
Once I passed that, they give me a certificate. Okay. Now, it's the process by which a foreign trained pharmacist becomes licensed in America. So before we even talk about internship at all, you must first become licensed. So if I understand the question correctly, by the time you get the FPGEC, you're still ways away from being licensed in any state in the United States. When I got my FPGEC, that was in the end of 1998, I didn't become licensed until March 2000, because I had to then pass a test of spoken English, a test of English as foreign language, and then I had to complete 1,500 hours of internship, and then I had to take the NAPLEX as well as jurisprudence exam, and all of those things take time. Until all those are done, one is not able to become licensed in the United States. Some of the requirements that one would need after all those exams would be your residency status in the US, because you will need a social security number to be able to proceed and move forward in the licensing process. I hope that helps.
Oh, no, this is excellent. Well, let me, thank you, Dr. Kule. Thank you for really explaining that. That makes a lot of sense. And I also want to recognize him. He's a valuable member of ANAPSA, and I can see him. And then there's another person I see, Dr. Imao Meher, also a valuable on our executive, NAPSA executive. So I'm really glad both of you could join today. Yeah. So that answers the question. So the issue still is being licensed in US. So, and I think he clearly explained that. Yeah, thank you. I still see two people's hand up. I see Maureen and Dr. Peter Alphonsus. Okay.
Yeah, hello, can we hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, actually, I'm speaking on behalf of Dr. Rachel Odosanya that went off. She had to call me to present her question.
Okay.
Hello, can we hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, Dr. Rachel Odosanya was the one that was trying to speak, and she went off because her network had issues.
Okay.
So she was actually.
Yes, she is. But
Yeah,
she be able to
there's a lot of
because from what
feedback.
And at least
yeah,
on the playground.
Put your bag.
Where your bag?
Can they
I went on every ride. Congrats. Mama, I didn't agree.
Hello, can we hear me now?
Yes. Go on.
Okay. So I said I was speaking on behalf of Dr. Rachel Odesanya that was actually trying to make some point before she had issues with her network connection. So she has a point that she was advising that as we go to register, if we intend to register the residency program with the government, we should be a little cautious so that they don't look at it that the program is superior to the Nigerian fellowship program, So she's advising that we should look for a way out, not to make it look like there's a friction, so that we could just do it, yes, but we shouldn't make it look like it's superior to what we have done, so that the medical doctors don't use that against us. So that was her submission she was trying to make. I don't know if I've been able to make the point she said. That was what I think I heard she was trying to talk about. Then again, I was yeah,
that's well taken.
Yeah,
that brings us to the end of today's. So I'd like to call on Dr. Maybe Grace to give the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph Poli. Well, my task is simple this evening. On behalf of the Drug Information Unit, Pharmacy Department, University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital, Ilorin, Kwara State, Nigeria. I want to say a big thank you to the team
or rather the panel of discussants for the informative, enlightening, interesting, and brilliant presentations on the topic, Overview of American Society of Health System Pharmacists International Pharmacy Practice Residency Program. I sincerely appreciate Dr. Teresa Pants, Clinical Pharmacy Manager and PGY Residency Director, West Atlanta Medical Center. My preceptor, during my PharmD at the University of Benin, she gave us background information on clinical pharmacy and also downloaded information the residency program in our various hospitals. Your passion, your intellect, professional contribution. Thank you very much, ma'am. I want to gratitude to Dr. Senior Director of Office and Practice, HP consultant. She described accreditation standards. She mentioned that accreditation. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation and contribution. Thank you to Dr. Sharif Kamal, Director of Pharmaceutical Sciences at the Children's Cancer Hospitals. He provided information on how the residency program was established and run in the hospitals in Egypt. And good to know that you are ready, you'll be ready to come as a resource person to Nigeria whenever we call upon you. We appreciate your passion. Thank you very much, sir, for the fantastic presentation. Participants, we have had a useful day of intellectual ideas. We have profited from it. It is so enriching to listen to the team. It has been a great session. Once again, thank you, our distinguished speakers. I want to, at this time, thank our dignitaries. First of all, I'd like to thank the Chief Medical Director, University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital, and also our Mebu CMAC, UITH, the PSH Kwara State Chairman, AHAP National, CIPA National Chairman too. I want to thank all the fellows of Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, the fellows of West African Postgraduate College of Pharmacists, all professors online, PCN rep, the Director of Pharmaceutical Services, Kwara State, Mebu HOD, Director of Pharmaceutical Services, University of Ilorin Teaching Hospital. We really appreciate your presence en masse. I'd like to sincerely thank all the pharmacists from within and also in diaspora that have joined online. We really appreciate your audience. I also want to thank physicians, nurses, and other members of the health. We appreciate your audience. Thank you all. God bless you all.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a great session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you
very much for the
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Well done. UITH, well done.
Thank you, fellow.
Thank you.
UITH is really trying. You guys are setting the pace.
Our secretary, thank you. Sharif and Ms. Lane, we thank you so much.
Oh, Dr.
Ramadan
Bello.
Thank you so much. Dr. Otomezi, thank you so much.